For the most part, it's easy to see why Ark Nova, a game by first-time designer Matthias Wigge and German publisher Feuerland Spiele, is so popular. And that's because within the confines of the massive rules, you get to do pretty much what you want and build your own thing. Each player has their own zoo board that serves as a record of everything you've done over the course of the game. All the stuff that you do and acquire will be placed on this board or adjacent to it, and at the end of the game you look at all this and you're like, man, I really made something, didn't I? Sort of made it in the game terms. Didn't really make it, but you made it. And you look at it and you're like, this is kind of neat. It's a record of everything I've done. This is the Training Wheel Zoo, Map A. Everyone starts with Map A. It comes with a free enclosure of size 3. You can graduate to Map 0. There's a copy of each for all players, 1 to 4 in the game. Once you want to explore even further, there are 8 unique maps that all have different layouts and bonuses and restrictions. Don't have to worry about that right now. But you start here. You have an enclosure that you can place an animal in. And we'll talk about how to place animals in and build and so on. We'll cover that very briefly. The important point is you have a cougar that needs an enclosure of size 3 that is adjacent to a rock like this one is. I can pay 10 money. I flip over this enclosure to show it is occupied. I have some icons. I get appeal, which is a type of points. There's a bonus. Don't worry about any of this stuff right now. Well, I can build other enclosures. They have to be adjacent to what is already in my zoo. I can build a petting zoo. If I cover something, I get that bonus. So I can cover this and I get 5 money, or I can cover this and I get to draw a card, or I can cover this and I get this action enhancement token. I can do things as I wish, and you're going to want more enclosures so that you can have more animals, because often they all need their own space. Here's an agama, needs an enclosure of size 1. Flip it over to show it's occupied again. I pay 9, there's some icons, there's bonuses, whatever. Ignore all that. There are some petting zoo animals that go specifically in a petting zoo area. You can have at most 3 of these animals. You place a cube on there to show it's occupied by one thing. I get 3 appeal. I've got a petting zoo icon. Okay, you can add more things. Let's see, here's an emu. However, this needs an enclosure of size 5, which costs a lot of money. It covers a lot of ground, so you get some bonuses when you do that, but it takes a lot of money, and it has restrictions. I need 2 Australia icons before I can put this emu in here. Essentially, I have to prove that I'm trustworthy before the Australian authorities will let me house an emu. I have to show that I know something about Australia, so maybe I have to hold off on that. Here's this one. It needs 2 reptiles. I already have 1 reptile, but I can't get the rock python yet. Here's another one. Hey, this is a reptile, and if I get the boa constrictor, I now have 2 reptiles, and I can put the rock python in, but I need research first. So you're going to get other things in here. Maybe I will have an association with a university that gives me 2 research icons, and then I can play this, assuming that I have a 2 enclosure in which to put this thing. And now I have 2 reptile icons, so now I can play a rock python, which also needs a 2 enclosure, and so on. Everything gets built up over time. You're filling up the zoo. You're getting bonuses as you cover areas. You're getting appeal, which is a type of points. There's all these bonuses that I'm ignoring. There are blue text on some cards that apply only if you're playing a solitaire game. Okay, there's all this stuff that I am just washing over right now to talk about some basic actions. I've got a zoo, it's got enclosures. I'm going to put animals in those enclosures because that's what a zoo is, right? A place to keep animals or care for animals or show animal representatives to people who are not in those locations. There's all sorts of debates about what zoos are for and how this should actually work, but again, not going to get into that here. You can have associations with different partner zoos, so you will get those over time, and they lower the cost to acquire animals. If I have a partnership with a zoo in Asia, this would actually cost me 11. because it has an Asia icon and I've got an association. I've done some research, I've done some work, and they give me a discount when I acquire the Indian rock python. You can only get 4 partner zoos. There are bonuses when you cover this. You cannot get a 3rd and 4th partner zoo unless you get this particular upgraded action. Similarly, you cannot build in every location unless you have an upgraded build action. You cannot build certain types of enclosures, such as this reptile house. You have 3 reptiles here, and if you could build a reptile house, well, you have to fit it in. There are no restrictions. Let's see, I can just put this here in my made up example. And all the animals that could live in a reptile house, well, they could leave the enclosures that they were in, making them empty again for animals in the future. And they go and they occupy spaces in the reptile house. Occupies 0, 1, and 1. Look at that. So much room. So much more efficient. It's all this thing you're going to be building up over time. Why are you doing all this? What are you trying to do? Well, you're trying to get appeal because this is a type of point, but it's not the main type of point. It's not the thing that you really want to focus on in order to win. Those things that you're going to focus on are going to be conservation projects. And you're going to turn up 2 to 4 conservation projects at the start of the game based on the player count. And during play, you can take an action when you have a certain requirement on this conservation project and you have fulfilled it. For example, do you have 2 reptile icons? I do. In fact, I have 3. And I could take an action. I would take a cube from one of these spaces here, which gives me an immediate bonus. And I can cover the 2 spots and it gives me 2 conservation points. And those are the points that you really want in this game. Here is 1/3 of the game board in Ark Nova. Yes, only 1/3. And that's all we need to see at the moment to talk about the game's scoring, which will be a focus for you if you were actually trying to win the game. There are 2 methods of scoring. There is the conservation track and the appeal track. You will score on both of them over the course of the game. Appeal often comes through the animals that you play, and they look like tickets because people are going to come see the cougar and the rock python and everything else that you're adding to the zoo. It's a cool animal. It's going to add to the appeal of your zoo, and you move along this 1 for every appeal that you gain. Conservation works a little differently. You're going to gain that primarily by completing conservation projects, but there are other ways to gain it as well. And you are going to move along the green track, and you will notice the green track, well, you are going to advance 2 or 3 appeal for each conservation that you gain. And it's important to gain conservation because at game's end, you're going to look at where you end up on the conservation track. Let's say I end in this space here. You're going to look at the lowest appeal in that conservation area. That's 100. And I subtract 100 appeal from whatever I've gained. That's not good. So you want to gain as much conservation as you can. That is more important than appeal. You definitely want some appeal, but every conservation you gain is going to gain you 2 or 3 appeal in the end. So that is primarily the focus of what you're doing, but naturally it's the hardest thing to get. If these were the conservation projects at the start of the game, I'm doing okay. I have 3 reptile icons. I've been able to claim this project. Possibly I should have waited for a 4th icon. I would have gotten 4 conservation points instead of 2. 5th one, 5th point. But I've blocked this space. Now everyone else needs at least 4 reptile icons in order to get any points off of this project. And possibly I wanted to take those points early because when you get to 2 conservation points, you get to upgrade one of your action cards or take a second associate employee here to take a different type of action. So you get a bonus for reaching 2, and maybe you want to do that first rather than holding out for more points later. Again, I've blocked that space and no one else can take it. As for the other projects, well, I've got one Africa icon. I have no primates. It's going to take a while before I can score any of those. It would have been great if one of these were actually a Americas, because I've got two of those, but you don't have a choice of what comes up at the start of the game. You don't have a choice of which cards you have. You are dealt 8 cards and you keep 4 of them to start with, and ideally you're going to keep cards that partner in some way with these conservation projects and that possibly don't have restrictive requirements that make it difficult to play them in the first place. In addition, you are going to have 2 endgame scoring cards. You will get rid of one of these over the course of play, and they give you something else to focus on. So here, if I gain reputation, something else I haven't talked about, but you can gain reputation for covering spaces. If I get a certain level of reputation, then I'm going to get conservation points at game's end. Or I'm going to gain points for having rock icons in my zoo, such as the one I started with the cougar. I have 1 rock icon. I get 1 conservation point. Ideally, I want to get more, but will I get more? Will I get more reputation? Will I get more of these icons? It's kind of dicey sometimes because you have a stack of 212 zoo cards, not all of which are animals, but most of which are animals, and you have no idea what you're getting. You are going to be drawing lots of cards over the course of play. You are going to try to build smartly with what you're doing. You're going to get partner zoos to give you discounts, and this also counts as an icon. So I have 2 Asia icons right now in case that matters for something. You're going to have partner universities that give you something such as 2 research icons. So then I could play this thing, and there's other reasons why you might want to have research icons, or they'll give you reputation, or they will increase your hand size, which matters at certain points over the course of the game. And if you cover spaces on the board, you'll get conservation that way. So you want to build universities, you want partner zoos for all those bonuses, you want to cover these spaces for those bonuses and for additional appeal, and have room for all the animals that you put in them, and you want to finish conservation projects because you will pull these tokens off and get an immediate bonus, with these top 4 also giving you income each time you have a break over the course of the game. It's a lot to absorb that's all interwoven into play. I haven't even mentioned yet that in the giant deck of cards, there are also other conservation projects that you can play if you meet the requirements for them. So I might draw this one, which requires rock icons in the zoo, and hey, I've already got 1. If this were my goal as well in hand, well, great, these things overlap, and ideally I can score for both of them. Maybe I'll never see this card though, because it's one of 212 in the deck and it might never come up. Or you have this one, which gives you a reputation when you play it, and you release a predator in the wild. I've got a predator of size 3. I can release it in the wild by playing this project, and I get 4 conservation points. I lose the appeal. This spot would become empty again since my cougar is now gone, but 4 conservation projects is way better than 5 appeal. So you have to think about that. When I give up the cougar, well, the card goes away and I lose that icon. And if I was trying to score the Americas, well, I just lost an Americas icon. So you have to play things in the right order, build in the right order, put down universities and partner zoos in the right order, claim conservation projects in the right order. All of this is stuff that builds up over time and challenges you and pulls you in all sorts of different directions. How are you going to do all this stuff? With 5 action cards that you will be staring at intently over the course of the game as you try to figure out how to do everything in just the right order. Here are the 5 action cards that each player has in their own zoo. Animal starts in the leftmost slot on each player's zoo, and the other 4 actions are placed at random. On a turn, you are going to choose one of the 5 actions and do it. And the strength of that action depends on the slot where it is located, 1 to 5. So with a build action, for example, I just move this down to say, yep, I'm going to build. I can build 1 building of a size at most 5 because I'm in the 5 slot. So I can build one of the regular enclosures, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can build a petting zoo. You're limited to only one per game, so I've already built that. So I can pick an enclosure, I pay 2 money per space. I place it down adjacent to what's there. I get bonuses if I cover those. I can't cover water and rock, and blah, blah, blah. There's all sorts of rules that come into play for pretty much everything, and I'm going to gloss over a lot of those. And you then slide that down, and now building is far less attractive because I'm limited to building a kiosk or a pavilion or a size 1 enclosure. I can do that on a future turn, but that's all I can do because it has a strength of 1. So the desire to play a certain action varies over the course of the game, and you are often trying to take an action to move up another action to get a bonus off that, and so on and so on. You can play animals. 1 animal, if this is in the 2 to 4 range, 2 animals in the 5 range, you have to pay the cost of the animal. So you need money for buildings and animals. And we'll talk about how to get money in a bit. But you put those animals down, assuming you have enclosures, you have met all the requirements, and so on. Pay those animals, get the bonuses, get the appeal, get whatever the action is, carry on, and actions would go down. You can draw more cards. First, you advance the break marker by 2. The break is this little coffee cup, and it moves up a track, and when it hits the top of the track, there's a break. Talk about that a little bit later. The strength of the card's action depends on where it is, so a 4 action, I get to draw 2 cards. Add those to my hand. I have no choice. That's just what I get. I got a reindeer, I got a squirrel monkey. That's it. Hey, they're both in the Americas. If this America's goal that I put out as an example earlier were still in play, I'd be like, yes, great. If the primates one was still there, is at the start of the game, well, now I've got a primate. I've got an herbivore. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe I don't want these at all. Maybe I don't have enclosures this size. Whatever. This is what I drew, and you just run with it. So them's the break sometimes. That's often why you want a strength 5. You get to draw 3. I get to keep 2. I get to discard 1 card, which can be one of these or anything else from my hand. This needs 3 Africa icons before I can even play it. If Africa is a goal, maybe I'm just like, well, I want Africa anyway to get this done, and so I want to get lots of Africa icons and then get down to zebra, which gives me reputation and all this other stuff. Cool. Maybe I want that. Maybe I don't. It all depends on what I've been doing so far. Alternatively, if you have a cards action in the 5 slot, you can snap. There will be 6 cards on display, and you can take any one of those 6 and put it in your hand. And that's all you do, but you get the card that you really want, ideally, instead of some random stuff off the deck. And then this goes down. You can take an association action. And association is a lot of random stuff. You need a worker. You start with 1 worker, and you take 1 action up to a strength of wherever this card is. So 5 in this case, so I can do any of these 4 actions on the board. I can just take 2 reputation. I can take a partner zoo. I can't take Europe because this person took Europe before. I can't take Asia because I already have Asia. I have room for 1, and if I take 1, then I get to upgrade an action card. Maybe I want to do that. That's cool. I can go over here. I can take one of the universities that I don't have. I'd upgrade an action. For the 5 action, I can do a conservation project. I either play a card from my hand and mark it immediately and get that bonus, or I mark one that's already in play. This thing is super important, and I definitely haven't paid enough attention to it in the 2 games that I've played. So you're going to do one of those 4 things, and then move the association card down. And finally, we have sponsors, which I haven't even mentioned yet, but those are another type of card in the deck. Along with animal cards and conservation projects, you have a variety of sponsors, people who are going to give you some kind of bonus or help with research or whatever it is. So you can play a sponsor up to the level of wherever this card is. So I can play a sponsor up to level 5, which in this case would let me play any of these cards if they were all in my hand. Or I can move the coffee icon as many spaces as the strength of this action, and I get that much money. So that's one way to get money. Ideally, you probably want to play a sponsor because they do awesome stuff in general. So this guy, you put him down, you each time you play an Asia icon, and that includes the one I just played, I may build a pavilion. So that's great. I get to cover spaces on my board. I get bonuses if I'm putting a pavilion there. Pavilions give me appeal. I get appeal just for playing this at the time based on the number of Asia icons I have. I've got 1, 2, 3. I get 3 appeal immediately, and I'll get a pavilion every time I play something with the Asia icon in the future. Or maybe I want this sponsor here. I get to place a penguin pool. There are a whole bunch of unique buildings that are associated with different sponsor cards. If you are the person who gets this card, you are the only player who's going to get this penguin pool that must be put down adjacent to water, and it covers this space. And I get whatever bonuses I cover. And each time I play a bird icon into my zoo, I get some appeal. There you go. And if I have 6 birds at the end of the game, I get a conservation point. So it gives me an additional way to score points at the end of the game, which will then lower the amount of appeal that I lose and hopefully will help me win. And there's, again, a whole bunch of these. So this is a seabird. I get appeal for each connected water space. So if this were my board at the moment, this water space connects to this one, connects to this one. So great, I get 3 appeal, and I get conservation for each 2 isolated water spaces. So now I don't want to connect everything. There you go. Or a science project. I need a bunch of science, a bunch of research in order to play this. But each time I play research after that, I get conservation, which is great. I play this, I get an immediate X icon. And during the break phase, during the income that happens in the break phase, I get an X. And if I get all 3 universities, I get a conservation. So it's a little bit of everything all over the place. The X icon, haven't mentioned that yet. You can get them on the board. You can get them from sponsors. You can get them from animals. You can get them a lot of different ways. You can spend X icons to increase the strength of something that you're doing here. So I could spend an X icon and take a sponsor at level 6, which you may have to do because there are some 6th level sponsor cards. Or I can spend 4 of these when an association is here, and boom, I've got an association 5 action, and I can take this 5 action here, except I already went here. You can take the 5 action here if I can place 2 associations. Sorry. If you already have a marker on the board, you can place 2 and then take that same action again. If I had taken this for my first action and I had a worker available and I played 4 X's, then I could go here and I could take this. There's a lot of ands. There's a lot of chaining stuff together, piling things in order to make stuff happen. X tokens are super valuable. You can have at most 5, and there's different ways to get them. So one way to get them is that if you don't want to take any particular action, maybe I don't have anything I want to build right now. I have animal cards I don't like in my hand. The build is up here and I'd prefer to have other stuff up here. I can just choose to take an action, not do it, and get an X token and then slide that down. That's a terrible use of an action. You probably don't want to do that, but hey, now my card is in the 3 slot and association is here and so on. I didn't need to build. Let's get it out of the way. That's just what happens. Now, I mentioned upgrading the action cards. All of them, when you upgrade them, do better stuff. All right, so now when I build, I can build 1 or more different buildings that add up to the strength. So if I have build in slot 5, I can build a 2 and a 3 building together. Or I can build the reptile house, because you can't build that unless you upgrade. When you play animals, you can start playing 2 animals with only a strength of 3, and you get a reputation if you're at 5, because you're awesome. In addition, you can play cards from the display, not just here. So that's cool. Break. You can pick up cards from the display, in addition to drawing cards from the deck. And you can snap at a lower level. So everything is better. Association. You can perform 1 or more association tasks, and if you perform a task, you can then donate money. So if I donate 2 money, I then cover this space and I get a conservation point, and now next time I can donate 5 money and get a conservation point, and this is an additional way to get points, but you can do it only if you've upgraded your association card. And you're only going to upgrade 4 out of your 5 cards at most. The sponsors, you get to play 1 or more sponsors from your hand or from the display with a strength X plus 1, so now I've automatically got a strength of 6. Or I can break and I take twice as much money as my break. So if I break now at a strength 5, I get 10 money. Super. Everything is great. You want to upgrade everything and you can't. You want to build everywhere and you can't. You want partner zoos, all 4, you can't. You can't get them. You want everything and you can't get it. That is just the nature of the game, and you have to deal with what comes to you and keep digging for cards that will hopefully partner with whatever conservation projects are in play and whatever endgame goal or goals you might end up having. I say goals because there are some cards that will just let you draw an endgame goal. If you get an elephant, which will cost like $30, you can get an extra goal. And maybe it'll be awesome and partner with exactly what you're doing and just essentially give you free conservation points, or maybe it won't. And it's too late in the game for you to change courses and suddenly start collecting herbivores. Again, that's just the way things happen. I initially had no interest in playing Ark Nova because the people who had played it told me that it took 45 to 60 minutes to teach other players. A game would take 3 to 5 hours, and that was not really something in my wheelhouse. That was something really more for old Eric, by which I mean young Eric. Eric like 15 years ago, before child Eric, where I would play longer games and have that time to play something repeatedly and really internalize all of it and get familiar with it and make myself one with the game. So I said, I think I'll pass on here. And then Capstone Games offered me a review copy of the game at Gamma Expo, and I said, sure, I'll go ahead and try it. And now I've played twice, once with 2 players and once with 4. I'm glad I did. I want to play more. I want to explore more. And it's not so much that Ark Nova does something innovative or new or something you haven't seen before. It's just really good at the type of thing that it is. That is, everyone having their own greenhouse in which I'm building a project and I cultivate everything and I try to grow stuff over time. And the more I grow, the faster that other things grow. As I improve my actions, it's going to let me do other things more quickly. There's lots of things that chain together where you might advance on the conservation track and you get a bonus, and maybe I get a free university from that bonus, and then that will let me upgrade an action card. Or something else goes on here, or I advance on the reputation track, and then that's going to give me a card upgrade as well. And if I upgrade my cards action, I can keep going on the reputation track and get more stuff. So everything sort of chains together in different ways, and you need to play lots of times in order to have everything make sense. Again, I've played twice so far, and things don't make sense yet. I learned essentially the same thing at the end of both games, which means I didn't really learn it the first time, which is you don't want to mess around with getting conservation points too long. You want them quickly so that you can upgrade an action, which will let you do other things faster. So you do other things faster and advance along this track. The hardest thing that I found in the game is to keep advancing on the association track so that you can score the conservation projects, which give you the real points. Gaining appeal is fine and all, but you are going to lose all the appeal that you gain if you don't advance on the conservation track as well. But to advance on the conservation track, you are going to need to do other things, such as playing animals and sponsors and this, that, and the other thing, building certain things, and that will move you along, ideally both tracks at the same time. I ended my second game with a score of -16, so I didn't learn anything after the first game. I needed many, many, many more turns because I did not improve my greenhouse quickly enough. So you got lots of chicken and egg choices where it's like, I want to do these 4 things and I'm not sure the right order, because if I do this, it's going to give me a bonus that will help in this one way, that'll do this other thing, that'll do this, and then maybe this is the right time to play this card. Or if I play this first, and then this and this and this. So it's not necessarily clear how things should be put together the right way and which action should come first and where you should build. There's all this stuff that sort of cascades from one action to the next. And again, chicken or egg, what are you doing first? With more time and more experience, maybe those choices will crystallize better for me. What else? First come, first serve nature of the game where you're trying to grab the conservation projects. There's limited spots available. People can add more conservation projects to the board. And there's a limited number of those. So there'll be at most 2 to 4 depending on the number of players, and older ones will get kicked off. But you need to do things in the right order as you're trying to work for them, right? You're taking actions. Your association action is moving up the board. You probably want to get that up to 5 so that you can claim a conservation project, but often you need a partner zoo so that you can play an animal first. Or you need a university to give you research icons so you can play a sponsor. And there's all these different things pulling you in different directions, and sometimes you'll just goof and realize it far, far too late. For example, in my second game where I released a herbivore, I believe, to score on a conservation project that was one that was player added, which meant it could go away at a certain point depending on how many other projects were played. But there was an existing conservation project where if I had 2 herbivores, I could score it. And I could have scored that one. And then later release the herbivore and scored. But instead I released it first, assuming I would get another herbivore later, and I didn't see one for a long time. And at that point, it was too late. So it's all about putting things together in the right order to see how things work. Additionally, my endgame bonus was for having small animals, and I released one. So I hurt myself 2 ways with that action. I couldn't score that other herbivore project, and I hurt my endgame bonus, and I don't know why I did it, but I did it. Again, I'll blame the child. The child is responsible for everything. So many things can be blamed on that child. So there's a million things going on, and all this as well is you filtering through this 212 card deck, hoping to come up with things that will work for you. And they may or may not come. You're going to keep taking the cards action and stuff comes up, and there's some ways that you can filter through cards. There are some cards that let you tuck other cards underneath and score bonuses for them. You get extra appeal for putting animals under other animals. That's a weird see, but you can do it. Or there's ones that let you throw away cards from your hand to draw replacement cards. So cool. There's some ways to filter through, but often you're still just up to the luck of the draw. Maybe you're going to get a sponsor that works perfectly with what you're doing, as one of my opponents did in a 2-player game, where they had an elephant that let them pick up an endgame bonus that worked perfectly with what they were doing. And then my mistake in that game, separate mistake, is that I didn't end the game soon enough. So you are moving one token on the conservation track, the other on the appeal track, and when a player's markers meet, that triggers the end of the game, and each other player gets one final turn. So I had a chance to end the game and didn't, because I was trying to score more conservation points, but I didn't really get a sense that to score more conservation points, it would take me like 5 more turns to do this first, to meet this step, and so on and so on and so on and so on. And in the meantime, my opponent did awesome stuff and scored a ton of points. So if I had ended it sooner by playing animals and bumping my appeal marker, I would have lost all those points because my conservation marker did not move, but it still would have been better just to end it sooner. I wasn't doing anything. And so again, judging the nature of the game, judging the pace at which you're playing and the pace at which you're actually scoring points is not going to come in your first game or two, at least not for me. Maybe you're better than I am at playing these games, but I'm not a good judge anymore, due to the child, I think, of how the flow works and how you can get a sense of building things over time, and you're planning out like 4 or 5 turns in advance in order to hit this goal. And by the time that comes around, possibly you'll have drawn more cards, or more cards will have come up in the display, or something will have happened to give you something else to build on for the future. So let me mention quickly the break, and then that will be it. Again, I'm not covering all the rules, but the break track, you're going to move this marker, and then you hit a break at the end, and whoever triggers that break gets an X, so it's often a cool thing to do. And then you're going to check your hand size, so throw away extra cards. Maybe you drew cards, and now you just have to throw them away. So watch where that break marker is and see who can possibly bump it up and just make you waste the action that you took. And there's some markers that will go away. Doesn't matter. You refill the association board. Everyone gets their markers back. And so if someone took that European partner zoo, now there'll be another European partner zoo, and it will be available to you again. And the first 2 cards on the track go away. All the other cards get bumped up, so there'll be a flow over time. There's lots of ways to pick up cards from this track as well. Typically, aside from snapping, you can pick up cards based on where your reputation marker is. So the further you move your reputation marker, the more choices you have available, although often they all stink. You don't want them. I can't do that sponsor. I don't have those requirements. I don't want that type of animal. I don't have an aviary to put the birds in. Whatever it is. Often you're looking at those 6 cards on display, and you're like, I guess I want one of them maybe, but do I want to take my snap action just to pick up that okay donkey for my petting zoo? I don't know. Probably not. But it all depends, again, time of the game. How quickly are you picking up that elephant? If you're picking it up on the first turn, while you got the cards up there, you have something to work towards rather than just doing stuff. And right now I'm still at the doing stuff stage of the game. And then finally, you're going to get income. You get income based on where you are on the appeal track. So the more appeal you have, the more money you're going to get. And you also get income based on what you've cleared off on your player board. So these are all income things. You can get conservation points as income, which is awesome. Or money, or a free 2-space enclosure in case maybe you've got some plan or you want to put lots of small animals in there, you're trying to cover the board, there's all sorts of different reasons to do stuff, or you just get a free snap. Oh, there's all these other one-time bonuses here. And kiosk will give you income, and so on and so forth. Again, there's just details raining down on you continually as you're trying to sort things out. So the basics of the game are straightforward. Build up enclosures, put animals in those enclosures, work towards goals. And then there's all the other stuff that just piles on top of you. That leads me to suggest that if you want to play the game, ideally have everyone else read the rules on their own first. And you can avoid the teach and get started more quickly and get right into the game, which is still possibly going to take you a long time. My 2-player game took 3 hours. My 4-player game after that also took 3 hours. Maybe we're getting faster. Maybe we're just worse. Hard to say.